So welcome to episode 146 of the Campus Comics Cast, coming at you through the fourth wall. My name is Scott Reed, and I'm joined on this episode by
Mike Atchison
and Chad Schubert.
And as the name suggests, we are going to spend a little bit of time talking about the Disney Plus series She-Hulk, and then we're going to dive into the, who was it? Is it Image that did public domain? I've already forgotten who published it. All right,
yeah, so it's Image.
Chip Zdarsky's 5-issue public domain series, and then of course wrap up the episode with a CLZ Shake. So you guys, anything you want to add? Mike, do you want to say something about Carlos Pacheco? I think that's his passing occurred since we last recorded.
I think any podcast that mentioned his illness were caught off guard because they barely got the news out before they found out that he had actually passed. So I'm not familiar with ALS or what the ramifications of that disease are, but it sounds like he sort of planned things to really just work as long as he could, and maybe knowing that you know, after that it was just, there was no coming back, there was no reversing the symptoms, and it did inspire me to, I think most of the work I've seen of him was in Batman Superman, or Superman Batman, back when Superman was the headliner on those duo comics. But I remembered a JSA comic that was Thanksgiving themed, where you have Superman and one Power Girl bringing the turkey into that's on the cover, and they're bringing in the turkey to the rest of the Leaguers and the Justice Society, and that was by Pacheco. And so I got it out and read it, and I also got out the JLA, JSA, Virtue and Vice trade that he did. And I think I'm gonna get online or maybe order a copy of Avengers Forever, because I've heard that was basically his best work with Kurt Busiek. So anyway, hats off to Carlos, and the industry will miss him, and I'm sure all his friends and family will too.
All right. I don't know. There wasn't any other news that really jumped out at me. Was there anything that either of you guys heard that, I know that Blade got a new director finally, so to replace the one who had fallen off, but
we lost Kevin Conroy since our last episode.
Okay. I've forgotten what we have talked about.
Right. Yeah.
Talked about as we recorded,
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Kevin Conroy, the voice of Batman for the animated series and many other iterations of Batman. Other cartoons, video games, you name it, he's done it.
He showed up in the CW Crisis on Infinite Earths as Batman in one of those episodes, not animated, So.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, he had a short run, I think, with cancer that has ended up what he passed from.
Yep.
And
he was 66.
Yeah, young. Other than that, I don't see any other major news.
I was pulling up the name of the director for Blade here, Jan Demange. So okay, so I guess his big movie is something called White Boy Rick.
Okay.
Which makes you wonder. So anyway, and apparently it's going to get a new script. I think there was a rumor floating around that the Blade movie was basically Underworld again. So they felt like so it was like too much of the same, so they had to basically go back to the drawing board on that. So, but again, that's just like a rumor I read someplace. Who knows if it's actually true or not? So,
and I think it's definitely pushed back. I don't know how far it'll end up being pushed back, but.
And who's playing Blade?
Mahershala Ali.
Okay, he's the
Green Book.
The Green Book,
guy.
yeah. Mm-hmm. I keep wanting to say the Green Mile.
All right. So She-Hulk.
Shulk.
All right. Mike, initial thoughts on She-Hulk.
Initial thoughts. Well, it was considering there was a lot of emphasis on Jen's relationships more so than her, and by relationships I mean personal relationships, more on that than really her professional or her, her talent as a litigator, or her ability as a superhero. It seemed more like a rom-com because it was kind of funny. Um, I'm just not a rom-com kind of guy. I won't say that it was. This is just smack dab in the middle of the pack when it comes to the Marvel / Disney Plus TV shows for me. However, it was one of those shows where I could sit and my wife was enjoying the heck out of it, and then at least I know she's not suffering for my sake watching something like Sandman, which I love, but she's like, what the heck is this stuff? So, but yeah, so it's fine and amusing. But I think it's just right in the middle, and there were some really good things, but there were some also like over the top stuff. But hey, again, not complaining, just middle of the road.
Chad, what about you? Initial thoughts?
I feel as though with not reading the character whatsoever, not knowing much about it except for maybe some covers that I've seen, of a She-Hulk book, it set out to do a thing and accomplished that thing. It didn't feel like it veered or was confused about what it was supposed to be, whether it was 100% liked or was the perfect thing for what it was. It felt like maybe it was really close to the source material of the She-Hulk that they were working off of, and that it didn't veer very far from that. But I thought it was good. It wasn't my favorite thing in the entire world. If I'm going off of even the last couple of things, Miss Marvel still is much higher on my ranking than this is. But I was rewatching it prepping for the show, and I was like, oh yeah, I liked that part. That was funny, and there were definitely parts that were giggly. I'm not a big CG person, so that for me personally, that was the thing that threw me off overall.
Yeah, I'm kind of, you have two takes on, really you have two takes on She-Hulk. You have the original take on She-Hulk, and then you have the John Byrne take on She-Hulk. Of course, there are obviously other takes. Those are kind of like the big established two.
Gotcha.
And I knew going in they were going to lean heavily on the John Byrne version of She-Hulk. So there were certain things that I was expecting, like the fourth wall breaking. I was okay with it most of the time, but when we get to the last episode, it went too far. So I was pretty okay with the series for the first 8 episodes, and episode 9 was like a total train wreck for me. So yeah, it's just I was like just shaking my head the entire time. So it really, for it to be part of the, they have this established MCU, and for it to be part of the MCU, it creates problems. I know they say they've addressed those problems. It's part of the story, but I don't know. It's just went a little too far. So anyway,
yeah,
let's just real quick drop through some of these episodes. Not going to spend a lot of time on each one. Just maybe talk about a few things. So episode 1, a normal amount of rage. Jen Walters' world is turned upside down after a freak accident leaves her with superpowers. And of course, this is where she is riding in a car with cousin Bruce, right? And they have an accident whenever a random spaceship pulls out in front of them.
That they barely ever address again.
Yeah, well, they talk about it at the end. Yeah, they talk about it at the end. So, as a result of the accident, some of Bruce's blood gets into some of Jen's injuries, and she thus starts turning into the She-Hulk. So, relatively close to the actual original origin. Well, actually not super close. She has an accident, but she gets a blood transfusion. So I guess they kind of just sped things up, here just a little bit. So at least that's how I remember the original origin. So, so pretty standard, I guess, origin episodes. We get our, origin here in the first episode of the series. So, I don't know. What do you guys want to say about episode 1?
Go ahead, Shed.
Okay. There were a couple of things that really worked for me. I liked that they held off on showing her fully until They didn't show it when she changed. It was just a reflection in the car. It was kind of just blurry. They didn't even really show it at the bar until the very end when she was like confronted by the guys that were at the bar. So I liked that they held off on that. That felt like something that you would see in an homage to an older kind of thing. It just had kind of some feels like they were trying to go for maybe the original Incredible Hulk show, which we see definitely later on in the series.
Yeah.
The first fourth wall break that we see, I thought was really clever. When she goes and turns and talks to the fourth wall, and then she looks confused that she's able to refer to the fourth wall, like she's not even used to it. So I was like, oh, that's a cool way to do it. And then the courtroom fight at the very end of episode 1, the campiness of like how staged and just goofy that fight was just like, okay, I'd really like that. That pacing was something that I didn't expect to get out of this, because it is so CG and you're thinking just like modern, high tech, whatever, and then you get like those campy vibes of something that is 30 years older than this, and you go, oh, okay, I like that. That feels good.
Yeah, I set a limit. I told myself, if they don't break the fourth wall more than twice in any one episode, I'm okay with it.
That makes sense.
So it's like, I just don't want it to all the entire, because they're not super long episodes, right? So I don't want her talking to us as a viewer the entire episode. That would just be taking it a little bit too far. So I knew there was no way that I was going to get they were going to not have her break the fourth wall, so I just had to accept that going in. And after the first episode, I was actually pretty positive on this show. So even the first few, I was relatively positive, though I didn't like what they did with a few of the characters as the series progresses on. So
yeah.
Now her Tatiana Maslany, is that how we say her name?
Yeah.
Of course, I remember her from was it Orphan Black? Yeah, which was kind of a challenging show because she had to play all of these different characters. And she was even on Parks and Rec for like 2 or 3 episodes, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so she did a really good job, I thought, with the material that she was given. I didn't realize how short she was, though.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add, Mike?
No, you guys covered it pretty well. I did want to mention, like you said, about her being on Orphan Black, and she's a really good actress. Yeah, the CG, it's just TV quality, I guess, but that's not really a complaint because you only have so much budget, and
I don't think the CG in some of any of the bigger budget ones is significantly better.
Right.
I mean, it's a CG. You tell it, it's CG. It's not like they're tricking you. So if we were to the point in the movies where they were tricking us, then it would be different. But we're not to that level yet. So
the only pet peeve I had was why her hair had to change from the actress's curly locks to She-Hulk's flowing long hair. I mean, that didn't really make sense. It didn't really need to be that way, and other than to make her more sort of a sexy.
I think it was that way in the comics. I mean, I think she had short hair and it would go long. When she turned, even in the very first issue of Savage Sea.
Okay, well, I guess I didn't remember that.
I can go pull that issue up if you want.
No.
Just
not the first issue.
Verify.
But it was something I kept going, why is it going? Because see, this Tatiana has really curly hair naturally. So anyway, no, I don't have anything further.
All right. So episode 2, Superhuman Law. Jen is hired at a prestigious law firm, but must practice as She-Hulk and rep a complicated client who, of course, we learned is Emil Blonsky, the Abomination. And she was specifically requested, I guess, by Blonsky to actually represent her. And of course, the caveat, I guess, to her getting the job is that she has to represent as She-Hulk. She can't go in as Jen Walters, which she doesn't like initially, but as the series progresses, she gets more comfortable being She-Hulk as opposed to being Jen Walters. And that's something they do in the comics as well. Is it kind of started as a more traditional Hulk, transformation type thing, but as the series went on, she basically spent all of her time as She-Hulk and very little time as Jen Walters. So I guess we probably should have mentioned that because of her interfering in Titania's attack at the end of the first episode, she's fired from where she was working, which is why she now gets hired at this other law firm. And the character who runs the law firm, Holden, I think. Holden Holloway, is that the right guy?
Yes.
That's actually pulled from the John Byrne She-Hulk series. So that character actually does exist. This is one of those where I went out and tried to track down a couple of issues of in one of the actual series issues, this character's daughter becomes a supervillain. So I thought, I bet they're going to bring her in by the end of the series. They didn't, unfortunately. So, but but I was out there trying to grab some of those issues just in case. So.
Right.
I don't know, anything to add. I liked where this was going at this point, where it's like, oh, she's going to represent Abomination. I like the whole idea that he had been working for the government and was being mistreated. I was in big time still here in episode 2.
Yeah, I like the just kind of built-in conflict that's just ready to go, the potential for conflict with that.
Yeah, because we just seen Abomination in Shang-Chi in the Ten Rings, so it's kind of like, okay, let's find out. And of course, they had to explain a few things.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, this show, and she even jokes about it at some point in one of her fourth wall breakings, but is that it becomes the guest of the week show. But I like that. I don't dislike that at all. It's like you get to kind of hop in and check in on a bunch of other people, which feels like what the Disney Plus shows should be. It's supposed to be the gap between movies. So this is our way to check in with all these people.
Mike, anything to add?
No. I think honestly she's probably more of an interesting character than Bruce Banner in my book. Her alter ego as Jen Walters is a good one. So getting to see her in that role and doing her job was nice. I wish there was probably a little bit more of that, actually.
Okay. All right. Well, episode 3, we got the People versus Emil Blonsky. She-Hulk represents Emil Blonsky, a.k.a. the Abomination, but his parole hearing doesn't go as planned. So, of course, a couple of things are popping up here. One is, I think this is the first episode where Wong shows up. Or am I jumping in an episode early?
Well, no, not yet.
Okay.
Yes,
no, it is. He is.
Because he's the witness that helps get.
That's right. Yeah.
His parole, right? Because he's the one that broke him out. Then Wong comes back because of another issue in the next one. Of course, we see Wong quite a bit. So this is where things started turning downhill for me a little bit, because again, and I'm a stuck record on this, and it's not like I'm heavily invested in Abomination as a character or even Wong as a character, but they're turning these characters into, laughs as opposed to treating them a little bit more seriously. It's like Wong and his addiction to The Sopranos, and having things spoiled on The Sopranos throughout the series. I just thought was silly. Emil Blonsky turning into the, I don't know, flower child, for lack of a better way of describing him, and his 9 wives or 7 wives or whatever number that we end up with, just being the self-help guru. That was not a turn that I wanted to see. So that was, things started declining here. It wasn't terrible, but it's just not what I was wanting. I didn't think it was necessary. They could have found other ways to inject humor into this. I mean, Byrne had nearly 50 issues, or maybe even more than 50 issues on his run. I'm sure they could have pulled a few more jokes out of there. So, what did you guys think? Okay, then that much, huh?
No, I just we have to get our talking order. I start looking at the screen. No, I agree with you about Wong. That's just out of character for him to have that much humor injected into his character. Now the fake magician, I did like his little skit, his little his spiel, but uh, overall, I agree, it wasn't my favorite episode. It's just seemed like it was out of place for Wong to be that humorous.
But was Wong funny, or were things being funny happening around Wong?
Wong was
because Wong was like the straight man in the joke, right? Like I felt as though he wasn't really necessarily.
I felt like they were playing Wong for the laughs, whether it's him as the straight man or not. Because, and again, if you go back to the comics, Wong is this very, very noble character, right? And very formal, very trained, very proper.
Yeah. His tolerance, at least his tolerance for the girl who said whatever her name was with a Y, but not where.
Oh, we haven't gotten to Madison yet. That's
we haven't gotten there.
Okay.
Don't jump to Madison with a Y and two N's and not where you think it is.
Oh my gosh, that was like annoying as heck. But but that's even though he is the abbot to other people's Costello,
right?
It just seems sort of
out
of place situations. But
and as the Sorcerer Supreme, he should be. This is the guy who scolded Stephen Strange whenever he did the whole Spider-Man created the multiverse type thing for not being careful. And then what is he doing? He's just being nonsensical about it. So I want to go back to that Wong, not to the Wong that we have. One.
Mm-hmm. A few of my favorite things of episode 3 is just the amount of things that they just throw out there without explaining or really developing more. Is like you're supposed to accept that there's light elves that just exist in New Asgard, and like that's just they don't dive deep into it. You don't get a background. It's not like here's what this is. I like that Wong references that it's not a good idea to wipe people's minds. They've done that before, and that's not a good thing. And then he also throws around shadow dimension, a mirror dimension once again without even explaining what any of it means. And so we get a lot of these like little drop-in things.
Right. Well, some of those are referencing the other movies and other proproperties and stuff, right?
But they're not trying to be like, hey, they're just like, catch up, come on, like which I like that. I like that we're in that world now that they're really just leaning into what they've built over the 10 plus years of just like you should know.
That's right. If you're watching this, you should know. Yeah.
But it's not overly complicated to where it's like you don't have to know, but it's a nice little treasure for anybody that knows what's going on.
So episode 4, is this not real magic? She-Hulk's new client Wong is suing a magician for unauthorized use of the mystic arts. So mostly a filler episode for me. What and was his name? I mean, I thought they were gonna go Johnny Blaze. It
was almost. Donnie Blaze.
Donnie Blaze, yeah.
Yes.
So you had to like listen to it, just to be for sure. It's like, what did they say? Oh, okay, right. Again, just kind of the silliness, and it's not like Wong couldn't have just stopped him if he wanted to. So no, they're suing him. So okay, whatever.
All I want to say is that Madison with 2 N's and a Y, but it's not where you think. Somehow I knew exactly where the Y was when I typed out the name. I was like, it's right where I would think it would. It's after the S and before the 2 N's. Like. I liked her. She was ridiculous as a character, but I on the other side, not having any kind of like respect for Wong as a character was like the Madison and Wongers of it all.
And apparently they went back and like shot like an extra, like one of the extra credit or post credit scenes. I think is her and Wong.
Yeah,
and I think they shot that like way after because they thought the chemistry was so good. Yeah, it's just like, ugh. He wouldn't put up with that nonsense. So, I don't have anything else to say about that episode. Mean green and straight poured into these jeans. So She-Hulk discovers Titania owns the name She-Hulk and is suing her for trademark infringement. So this is the episode. We get a little trademark courtroom case, right? And it's not Jen Walters. It's actually the lead lawyer. It's actually her coworker at the Holloway Attorneys, whatever the name of the place that she's working at.
Right.
And just through some random thing that she did online is what basically saves her and allows her to keep the She-Hulk trademark instead of Titania use it for a cosmetics line. I struggle with what they've done with Titania. Of course, there's the original version of Titania where she really is just the opposing bruiser for She-Hulk. But part of me is like, if somebody had superpowers now with our social media world, would they try to lean into that a little bit?
Sure.
Probably.
Yeah.
So I accepted Titania more than some of the other characters. Changes to some of the characters that we have. So I was pretty much okay with it.
I did want her to be a cooler villain than and see more of her because I like that actress. I can't remember her name at the moment, but
Jamita Jamil.
Yeah.
Or Jamila
Jamil. Yeah, she's a comedian and I liked her and I was excited for her to be in the show, but I really don't think that as a character they did a lot with the person. It was more about what Titania is doing on paper or like in social media and stuff. It was just kind of more of a figurehead than it was an actual got to be a character.
I did not realize she had done so much voice acting.
Mm-hmm.
A ton. Now she was in The Good Place, which is where I'd seen her previously, but yeah. She's done a ton of voice acting. Wow. Now let's see. Was this the episode where we get the Wrecking Crew in it, or was that a different episode? But they try to get her blood. So there's this.
Oh, that was the one. That was episode 3.
Oh, okay, all right. So there's this subplot, right, going on where they're trying to basically steal some of General Ultra's blood, right? So this is like one of the first attempts. Okay, that was in, like you said, in episode 3. And they bring in the Wrecking Crew again, a very powered down version of the Wrecking Crew. It's basically like just 4 guys who found Asgardian weapons, and hire themselves out, which really kind of relegates their usefulness down the road as characters because they aren't going to be at the power level of a She-Hulk or Thor if they need to be to go into fights with the bigger good guys. So they kind of scaled them back for this a little bit. Next episode, just Jen. Jen is a bridesmaid in a friend's wedding, a stressful event compounded by uniquely She-Hulk issues. So again, this is just kind of like a fill-in. I think they make jokes. She breaks the fourth wall about this being some type of fill-in episode.
Right. Yeah, I think so. I think
I remember correctly. One of them she does. So, but it's her dealing with the whole thing. Gives them another chance for her and Titania to have a pseudo conflict, and of course she meets the guy. Here at the wedding as well, which is going to have ramifications later on in the series. This, I will also note, is the lowest rated episode on IMDb. I wouldn't say it's the worst episode, but I'm in the minority apparently on that one.
It's been a few weeks, since we've seen this, so I kind of equate what was better with what I remember, and I kind of forget about the less memorable episodes, and this is one of those. I can barely remember what happened, so maybe that's why it had that lower rating.
Well, part of it is, and it's nice, we actually got to see Tatiana Maslany as opposed to CG for a good portion of this episode, because part of the joke is that she wants Jen as her bridesmaid, not She-Hulk,
Right.
So in that regards, it was good. So, and again, it's not my least favorite out of all of them, but
yeah. Well, it goes down to that. This show, more than any of the other Disney Plus shows, feels like a sitcom. Like it feels like, and it feels like a crime procedural kind of drama at times, where they're like 25 episode seasons, and over half of them are fillers. So you almost have to have fillers just to even nod
24 of them are fillers.
Yes. Where there's no like plot advancement for any character whatsoever, and so it almost feels like it makes sense to go, well, I guess some of them did have to be filler a little bit, and just legal procedure because that's what it's trying to be. It's supposed to be a legal drama comedy, and so I guess it does it good in when it's trying to be.
Now, okay, I think it's this episode, The Retreat. So Jen visits Blonsky's wellness retreat, meets new friends, and get in touch with her inner She-Hulk. The most important thing that happens in this one, though, is the final scene where we have the designer to the superheroes, right? And he opens up and shows a box, and inside the box is the yellow and red Daredevil helmet, as opposed to, it's what a lot of people were waiting for. It's like, oh, we're getting, Charlie Cox back as Matt Murdock. And, my son being one of these people, he was like, he would ask me every single episode, did Charlie Cox show up yet? No. Did Charlie Cox show up yet? No. Did Charlie Cox go up yet? No. And that's the only reason he would watch the episodes. He would actually fast forward through the episodes to see if Charlie Cox was there, and then decide if he's going to watch the series or not. So, yeah. So it kind of tells you what a lot of people just thought about this series from the get-go. But again, we see more silliness with Blonsky in this one. He has the whole wellness treats. We get a bunch of grade D characters, Porcupine and and I can't even remember all of them. I'm trying,
Leapfrog and
goes Leapfrog in this one. He wasn't at the retreat though.
Oh,
right?
Okay, that's right. Yeah.
There was Man-Bull there. Was Man-Bull one of them?
Yes, Man-Bull.
Yeah. Right. They're
El Aguila
back and forth.
Oh,
and the
Eagle. So anyway, so they bring in like these grade D characters, just because, and some of them did make appearances in the Burn series, so that was kind of a nice little homage to it. So, but again, I didn't care for what they did with Blonsky's character, so he's a better actor than this nonsense that they had him doing. So, I just didn't care for it.
Like if they used him, if they had to use him just being a villain again, though, is not like, I guess, like, what else could you do with him? I mean, I don't know if making him the peaceful, like, just one with it, but I don't know what else you could do with that character besides be the complete opposite of what he was.
Yeah, they didn't have to go so crazy into the self-help guru type thing. I mean, they could have done something different with it, but it just wasn't working for me. I can't say anything beyond it just didn't work for me. They've kind of, and I thought, like in the movies, we have to have like this long-term continuing, like Abomination needs to show up in the comics every 15 to 20 issues. You know? It's not going to be the case in the movies where he has to come back at some point in the future. So they don't have to use him again like they do in the comics, so they can't make as dramatic of a change. But I just couldn't handle it.
Couldn't do it.
Yeah, it was just too much.
I think I had said, this may be when we were at the shop, it may not have been on recording at all, but he's very much just playing the same character as the Trevor character and the actor that is just just kind of goofy that we see in the Iron Man and all that stuff.
Yeah, but they tried to redeem the Mandarin, but that by bringing in somebody else. Well, they can't bring in somebody else to be Abomination.
That's true. Yeah.
So Mike, you got anything to add on these last couple episodes?
No, not yet.
Okay. All right. Next to the last episode, Ribbit and Rip It. She-Hulk represents Leapfrog, who was injured due to a malfunction in his custom-made supersuit. And this is where we finally have Charlie Cox officially show up as Morn. He actually is the the opposing attorney in a case where Jen Walters is representing Leapfrog, Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox is representing I can't remember the guy's name who's making all the custom
fashion designer.
Yeah, the designer who's making the clothing for superheroes, right? So, and of course, Murdock is able to use his skills as Daredevil, not it, but just in his normal life to actually figure out when Leapfrog's lying and get him to say some things incorrectly, and thus he wins the case. But for the most part, I enjoyed this episode. I will save the thing that I despise about this episode after you guys have talked about this episode. So, Shad, what about you on this next to last episode?
I liked it. It was cool to see Daredevil. I am the black sheep of the group that I haven't watched the Daredevil show at all, so I have nothing to compare it to. So I'm curious to see what you guys have to say about how this version compares to the Netflix Daredevil. I guess it's technically now also the Disney Plus Daredevil. But other than that, I was excited to see him. He was a lot more. There was a lot more, once again, CG in this Daredevil than I figured there probably is in the other version of the same Daredevil. A lot more flipping around and stuff, but I thought it was cool to finally felt like every week it was the check of like, is this Daredevil yet? Is it Daredevil yet? Oh, that's finally Daredevil.
Yeah, I think that's one of the mistakes they made is that he's coming, you're going to be in there. They really should have had him show up sooner so that people would stop wondering when he's going to show up. I don't know if that's what they were using to keep people coming back episode after episode. I don't know, but Mike, what about you?
I like the episode. I actually like the more lighthearted Matt Murdock that was portrayed here, as opposed to the Netflix Disney Plus, whatever you want to call it. But I liked it just fine. I liked how, and I know that I guess this is the episode with the court case where they're in there, and so one thing I liked is that that fashion designer cracked me up because he reminded me of the Flash had a character in his books called Paul Gamby, and he designed a lot of I don't know if he designed any Flash costumes or things for him. I think he ended up being an ally, but he also he designed a bunch of the Rogues' costumes for him. So that's where I was interested in that aspect of it. But yeah, I like this episode just fine.
I was fine with pretty much everything. As you mentioned, a more lighthearted version of Matt Murdock. There's even like I read through all the Bendis and Brubaker Daredevil, and they're very dark and moody. And then Mark Waid comes on the book, and it's a much more sunshiny Matt Murdock, right? So I'm okay. I can accept a little bit more sunshiny Matt Murdock. What I had trouble with was the walk of shame in San Francisco of him walking around in daylight with his shoes off, right, as Daredevil. This is a guy who's gone to great lengths to protect his secret identity, and they're just using that for a punchline.
Yeah,
and that just really, really bothered me.
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, that's easy. It was forgettable. It's a forgettable scene. So they should not have done that. But that was a cheap joke. And I don't like cheap laughs. So. You got two types of humor. You got the smart humor, and you got the Dumb and Dumber humor. And I don't want Dumb and Dumber humor.
Don't be attacking Dumb and Dumber.
I love Dumb and Dumber. All right, I think it's hilarious, but I don't want you to try to have the smart humor and the Dumb and Dumber humor at the same time. You either need to go smart humor, or you need to go Dumb and Dumber humor and then just make it not part of the MCU.
There's a stipulation. You're okay to have Dumb and Dumber humor.
That's right. That's why, I'm fine with the Deadpool movies, but I never wanted to see Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool in the same movie with Chris Evans' Captain America, because then something's got to happen. We got to go one way or the other, so. Anyway, anything else to add on that episode 8, which I thought it was weird. We have 9 episodes to this series, because most of the other stuff had been 6. Yeah. No. So all right. So whose show is this? Final episode. Jen finds herself in trouble with the law and struggles to pick up the pieces of her life. All right. So what it seems like is we have the traditional story where we have these 3 or 4 different storylines that are all going to get resolved in one big fight. So what does Marvel do? instead of not just having all the storylines getting resolved in one big fight, we have She-Hulk say, fourth wall break. Hey, doesn't this happen in all the series where we resolve all the storylines? Let's go do something else. And she literally breaks through the fourth wall. This is something I saw posted this on some random article. I thought there's no way they're going to do this. They're talking about She-Hulk's most powerful ability. And there were scenes in the John Byrne run of She-Hulk where she would literally know that she was in panels and say, oh, if I step over through this panel, I can automatically be where I want to be at. So she had this, again, fourth wall breaking, not just talking ability, but full out control, quote unquote, control the story type of ability. And they leaned into that heavily here in this one, where she goes and talks to Kevin. Yes. Right, who is not Kevin Feige, but a robot Kevin.
Do you remember what Kevin stood for, the acronym?
I've forgotten what it stood for. Because I
wrote it down just
episode. So, yeah.
Kevin stands for Knowledge Enhanced Visual Interconnectivity Nexus.
There you go. All right. But she goes and talks to Kevin about how to basically resolve this differently, and they just change the story, right? So that way it plays out in a slightly different way. So I just was totally just annoyed by this episode. It just, I didn't care for it. It's like, instead of like actually coming up with a different type of an ending, they just make fun of how all their other endings have been for all their other series. So it was so bad, I wish they would have just resolved all the storylines in one big fight, like they had done in some of the other ones. So I was still okay. I still was bothered by the walk of shame from Daredevil, but this one just nosedived this series for me. The ending was so bad. when you see her actually looking through the Disney show selection,
right? Yeah,
and jumping around looking for the behind the scenes for She-Hulk and moving over to that, which again, homage to the Byrne comics. But man, I actually didn't care for the Byrne Super She-Hulk comics either. I read that entire series. Yeah. So
knowing that there was connection to that makes it a little better for me. But I thought I would rather see the same thing we've always seen, which is like, if you break through the fourth wall because you don't like it, you go to the writer's room and you just talk to the writers, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. Like, I would have rather seen that than to go. I didn't like the Kevin robot. That was the big turnoff right there. Was the
Go ahead and finish. Yeah.
No, I'm good.
Oh, okay. All right. So, all right. Again, this just kind of killed it for me. So I really don't have anything else to say about this show. I thought Tatiana Maslany was good. Charlie Cox was good, but I just didn't like, again, what they had to work with on this. So we ready to grade it? You guys got anything else you want to add before we move on?
I'm good to grade.
All right. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right, you go first.
So this is one of those weird situations, maybe not weird, but just comparative to another show or movie we're going to review later. The Rotten Tomatoes score is 85%, and the average audience score is 33%. Big disparity.
Wow.
Yeah. And just the opposite. I mean, I don't know. It's opposite of what you normally see, because normally you get a lot of critics that are got their nose in the air and this is just a stupid superhero movie, and they'll score low, but the audience had a good time. So it makes me wonder, I've wondered before about Rotten Tomatoes, but still, maybe there's just enough fans out there that thought this did a disservice to the character. Maybe it was, either way, my scores, I'm just going to put it right around, we'll say 6.0, which would be what a fine. Yeah, mm-hmm. I think a 6.0 is a fair grade. Well, not literally fair, but it's fair in the sense of being not unfair. So I'll grade it 6.0.
Okay, Shad?
I will tell you that I'm gonna be high because I always am a little bit higher. But I did, as we talked about it and kind of went through it, I dropped down probably a whole point from where I was. Just because, so the things I liked about it, I really liked about it. The things I didn't like about it, were big, kind of turn off. So the highs were high, the lows were low. So I've got a 7.5, a very fine minus on it.
All right, I am going to go very good 4.0. It was just, and it's not because this show to me has the Morbius problem. Morbius had some good actors, and the story was just kind of all over the place. I didn't like where the story went a lot. I really would have a hard time recommending it to anybody. Say, oh, you really, really need to watch She-Hulk. I could probably go in and say, hey, watch episode 1, watch episode 8, just turned off before the very end. It's all you really need to see of this, right? And so, yeah, again, that's not something I'm going to recommend, so I can't give it higher than a 6.
Right. Yeah.
Also, now I'm down in that lower. Do I want to see Morbius, those characters again? I actually do. Do I want to see Tatiana Maslany as She-Hulk again? Yes, I do. I just want her to have a better story to work with. So maybe we got some of the nonsense out of the way. So maybe if we get a second season of She-Hulk, maybe we can get something a little bit better. And again, it's not the fourth wall conversation breaking. It's just some of this nonsense and the self-mocking. I'm not a big on that.
I'm going to say something that maybe it's. I think what we're seeing is that there's a lot of hit and miss with some of these TV shows. There's a lot of people that love certain shows, and there's a lot of people that just don't like the same show. Like there's so many people that love Loki, and then so many people that don't. And it's almost like because Marvel is trying, Marvel/Disney Plus are trying to diversify the type of shows they're putting out there in this TV format, that you're getting that sort of mixed reaction, which I think is fine. I'd rather see that than a cookie cutter approach. Yeah. So I'm okay with, I can digest a show like this without a problem. I can relax. I don't have to think about it much. I can have a few chuckles and we're good.
Yeah.
It's the difference between DC and Marvel is that Marvel's making different types of movies, like you're pointing out, and DC just keeps remaking a superhero movie.
Yeah.
Whereas Marvel's doing all different types of stories in there, which is one of the problems that DC has had. But can I watch a courtroom comedy show? Absolutely. Would I want to rewatch this courtroom comedy? No.
There's a couple of, I won't get into that. There's a couple DC movies that aren't going along with the formula, and that's like the Joker. But it's those Todd Phillips or Matt Reeves. But other than that, we'll see. I did hear that what's his name, James Gunn, came out, and I guess they're working actively right now on the 10-year plan. So maybe we'll hear some in the next couple months.
That's what they said. Like 2 months, we're going to get a plan. Yeah. So all right. Well, let's move on. So next up, we got the 5-issue series, Public Domain, courtesy of Chip Zdarsky. Now, did he write and draw this?
He did.
Yes. Okay. So he had full duty on this particular story. So how we want to go through this? Are we going to go issue by issue? You just want to talk about it? What's your thoughts, Mike? Because you suggested this book.
Well, I suggested it because I actually had read most of it by the time I made this suggestion, and just an overall initial impression was that it's one of those Earth Prime books. It's like it's set in our Earth. It's set, where we are, and it is obviously, or it was a passion project or a vanity project of Chip Zdarsky. I didn't know this at the time when I read the series, but it was on Substack originally. And just a quick overview. Sure. It's a series about a journalist whose father helped craft comic book stories for a character that's now part of a movie universe. Sound familiar? Yeah, because that happens all the time. I mean, you can go back to the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Well, that's very clearly the two characters that are being referenced in this is Stan Lee and Jack.
Yeah.
So
and in the first issue, you're introduced basically to the family. You're introduced to Miles, who's I don't want to say he's a ne'er-do-well, but he's not happy being a puff piece reporter at a newspaper or magazine, whatever he's at. He wants to be a novelist, and but at least he's better than that writer that was in Radiant Black that just cried because he couldn't come up with anything to write. but it is basically just tells of the problematic nature of creating comics in an age where all the movies are all that matter. That's I mean, really, when you think about it, the audience, that's like the flip side of the whole. Oh, it's great now I can wear my Green Lantern T-shirt without anybody laughing and going, look at that goofball, because there's been a Green Lantern movie. But because of that, you have a lot of these very surface level fans that don't know about all of the content and the creation that went into the character um, itself for decades previous. So anyway, I'm that was my general just like first issue thing. But what do you guys think about it?
Well, ultimately, what we end up with is a fictional retelling of the controversy that exists between Stan Lee and Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
Whether who was primarily responsible for the creation of these characters, who got credit for the creation of these characters, what they're doing with those characters now. The version of the Stan Lee character that we got is actually much worse than what the Stan Lee was in real life, and the version of Kirby that we got was a much more I don't know, pacifist type version of Kirby. Kirby was pretty vocal when he had the opportunity, to talk about the work that he done. It wasn't very just accepting of it, So I guess they did that just for, not to make it 100% trying to retell that particular story and to kind of exaggerate the differences between the two sides. But the thing is, it's kind of a story that if you know anything about comic history at all, you already know this story, and you know how it doesn't play out very well for the comic book creator, whenever all is said and done. So, I don't know, Shad, go ahead.
The first issue and throughout this, I thought the characters, I'm not as well versed on the history of these. But it definitely felt real enough, to kind of get that sense that like, oh, this isn't too far off from what anybody could be experiencing at one point in time. But I thought the characters were really well like written, likable. The dad I really liked, the co-creator, the kind of loser brother that never held down a job, that was kind of just goofy and didn't care about like. They were all really cool, and by the time we got to the end, I liked their kind of wrapped up happy ending that we got too.
So I don't know what else. Mike, what do you want to add?
Well, I know I'm sort of I took every one of my issues out of their bag so I could flip through them and talk. But the one scene I really enjoyed in issue 1 was when Miles, the reporter, was interviewing the actor that played the Domain, and it's just just shows Zdarsky's talent. He's in that upper tier of writers these days, and add to the fact that he's no slouch as an artist either.
No, yeah,
it's very clean line. It's very easy to follow. Just a good storyteller. But yeah, I enjoyed this all the heck.
I was able to sit down and read all 5 of these issues in one sitting in one night. Yeah, it was very smooth to read through it. So the story flowed very, very well.
Yeah, I enjoyed his brother. Is it David, the brother? He's kind of a goof. Doesn't really. He's not worried. Doesn't take anything too seriously. But he's also kind of a big galoot, and he's not going to take any. He's there to. But he's also sort of a pacifist. But it's a good family dynamic type thing. You can just see this being real people. And when you were talking about the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby stuff, I think that there is definitely that aspect, but it's also, I think, more so creators versus the industry, the movie industry and the production companies and all that stuff. They don't give, I'd almost go out and say Warner Brothers is a great example of that. I don't think that Warner Brothers as a company, that there are people in it that really care about the characters, and they look at the bottom line and say, well, let's put out this movie that says this, does that, or let's look at the what do you call it when an audience Do you have like a sample audience before the movie's released?
Like a screening or
Yeah.
test screening.
You think about that first Suicide Squad movie that came out, and they got the reviews back, and all they really liked was the music, so they just made it one big music video. So it's very reactionary, and
yeah. Well, I'm gonna say one thing in Warner Brothers' defense, because I think I read an interview with Jim Starlin. Of course, Jim Starlin on the Marvel side created Thanos, right? And on the DC side, he's created some relatively minor characters.
Yeah.
And Starlin talked about the compensation checks that he received from Marvel and I'll just say DC, and the checks he got from DC were bigger than the checks he got from Marvel. Though so even though Warner Brothers may not be as true to the characters, they are apparently doing a better job compensating the creators than what Marvel is actually doing. And Marvel is doing billions of dollars, and a typical DC movie is 750 million. So
yeah, and I think that's, from my research or my reading, that's more due to DC Comics, the company, than Warner Brothers. That's due to people like Paul Levitz, some other people higher in the hierarchy have tried to go out. I follow Paul Levitz on Facebook. He just has more like a blog when he puts out a post, and you can tell that there's certain people that cared about the creators they would maybe get in the ear of Warner Brothers to make sure that they're acknowledged in the movies. So, but you're right. Yeah, I mean, we're not really doing an issue by issue. This was just a 5-issue run. I'm gonna say here, I don't know, my computer like totally blipped on me. It's like my video driver updated. I didn't even know it.
You're still coming through okay. So
okay. Basically, I thought the pacing was fantastic. I felt like, well, this kind of ended anticlimactically, but then again, it's not the type of story that has a real climax. But I do think that it's an opening for future stories, because we
don't want to see the real ending, because we know what's going to happen is this guy's going to publish 3 or 4 issues and
under his own company,
under his own logo, and then he's going to fold because he's not going to have any money left. Is what's actually going to happen. So
that's not what I want, Scott. Come on.
But that's the ending. We got it so that we could have a happy ending.
I see. Well,
yeah.
Okay.
But he's got his friend who's going to bankroll the whole thing. He's
1 year.
1 year. That's right. Yeah.
1 year.
Well, that's dark. That's like Mark Russell dark. Jeez. Well, I was kind of hoping, there's going to be a sequel. We're going to see how successful they are with this new publishing company.
I did want more for sure. Be fiction.
Although I can't remember what the name of that company was. It wasn't really, I didn't like the name of it.
I don't remember.
I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, it was, I enjoyed the heck out of it. Like you said, Scott, it's something you could read and you could sit down and read through the 5 issues in about 45 minutes if you wanted to.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like it wasn't wordy. I mean, it was pretty wordy, but man, it just flowed. The art, you could almost, a lot of it, you could tell what was going on in the story without even having to read a single one of the word balloons, so, which is definitely a sign of good storytelling and I like the homage to the Kirby desk that we see in some of the artwork, that upright. I mean, that absolutely was Kirby's desk, and but it's, that's, it kind of all starts, right? The big reveal in the first issue is when the assistant to, I'm just gonna call him Stan Lee. The assistant to Stan Lee finds randomly the paperwork that says that Jack Kirby owns the Dominion. You're right. So, and then this kind of just snowballs into what we get into this story. And we haven't talked about the fact that, okay, so Miles, in addition to his other problems, also is in big gambling debt. So one of the at the end, the father basically just asks for rights to his character and enough money to pay for his son's gambling debt. It's just like, okay. They would have been happy. The company would have been happy to pay more and felt like they were still getting
Yeah.
a deal.
This reminded me of Kramer on Seinfeld that
Yeah.
he settled with the.
So he could be a model.
Yes, he could get,
coffee
instead of taking.
Yeah.
This is right after the news about the woman that was burnt from the McDonald's coffee, and instead of settling for millions, he settled for lifetime supply of coffee.
Yep.
The name of the company at the end was Dallas Comics, which is their
Dallas
last name.
Comics. That's right.
Yeah. What was the name of the Marvel-like company though? That was the big company.
Oh, I don't know. I opened my page right to where I needed to be.
Yeah. I guess it doesn't matter. So.
But yeah, just how everything kind of Muhammad, the friend that the dad had that just kept giving.
I loved him. Yes.
Yeah. And he stopped by and he'd give him stuff and he'd be like, "Oh, no charge." And then he's like, "Oh, I want to bankroll your first year of everything." And he's like, "You've got money, but you always just took it." He's like, "Well, I kept offering to pay and you just didn't let me pay. Like it wasn't that I didn't have money to pay for these books."
Yeah, I was glad how that part of the story turned out because like I was going to be like so depressed. It's like it's been like Kirby giving away all this stuff and this guy's been selling it on eBay,
right,
or something like that. I was glad that he was actually an honest to goodness collector and was excited to own it and was making his money someplace else, so he didn't have to sell this stuff.
Right.
So,
but I liked it.
That did make me happy. Yeah.
And then the dad went to draw at his table like the first time, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't as good as it once was." And then the kind of deadbeat son draws over it, and he's like, "Well, he inks it," and it's like, "Well, I did tattooing for a while, and it's kind of like tattooing, but without the skin." Like,
yeah. Yeah. No, it was. Yeah. Of course, I thought the penciled version was fine. I don't know.
Yeah,
what they were saying about it being bad. I was like, that's pretty good. It looks pretty good to me.
I kept looking over it, and I was like, I don't quite get it, I guess, but
maybe it just wasn't dark enough or something. I don't know. I don't know, Mike. What else do you want to say about this series?
I mean, I can't really say any more other than it's relatable. If you're a comics fan, it's relatable. If you got any kind of knowledge of the industry, it is. And it was enjoyable.
All right. Well, we ready to grade it?
Grade it.
All right. Who's going to go first?
I can go.
All right. You go.
All right. I give it a 9.0. Very fine near mint. I really liked it. Thought it flowed well. I was happy to read it. And it's outside of my normal indie books that I read, and it was outside of the normal like superhero books that I read. So it was kind of a nice, like, I would have never picked this book on my own, but I'm glad that it was recommended.
All right, I'll go ahead and give the low grade out of all of us. Okay, so and I'm teetering on this one, but I'm gonna go a VG fine, which is a 5, just because of the fact that I have zero intentions of ever reading this book again. I think your time would be better served actually reading a little history about what's gone on with creator rights. Read about Neil Adams and Siegel and Schuster. Read about Jack Kirby getting his artwork back for the first time from Marvel. I think it'd be a better use of your reading time than to read public domain. So, Mike.
Wow, you make a good case for that. That's interesting. So, I mean, because if this was a video format, people'd see my jaw drop whenever I heard that grade. Because I'm more in I'm not quite where Shad is, but I'm an 8.5 very fine plus, because while you're right, there's probably better ways to learn about the history of comics. I've read what's the Marvel comics, the history of Marvel comics, by the guy named Lowe. Anyway, it's a nonfiction, right. And you're right. Reading stuff like that can be very informative, but this is entertaining as well. And it was just an easy breezy thing. You didn't have to worry about 17 different subplots. It was straightforward, and I enjoyed it, and I think it warrants that. I'll keep it. I won't get it in trade, but it is one of those little mini series that I will keep the issues, or when I do get rid of it, I'll give it to somebody who would really probably enjoy it. So 8.5, very fine plus.
All right, CLZ Shake.
Shake it up.
Take it up. Who wants to go first? Here, I got my phone out already. I think
All right.
I can go first. I got to get it here where I can so you can. It's not shaking. There we go. Oh, what is that? Oh, Demon Knights. Okay, so finally, there's one that I can actually be somewhat excited about talking about, and so this was actually my favorite series from the New 52. All right. So this was set like, I don't know, like 500 years in the DC past. And if you were ever a kid who grew up playing like Dungeons and Dragons, this was the closest thing to a DC Comics Dungeons and Dragons book. The first episode, it's literally Demon, Vandal Savage, the Shining Knight, Madame Xanadu, I think. It might be a different one. It may not be her. Maybe somebody else.
Hold on. I thought you said Moon Knight.
No, Demon Knight.
Oh, Demon. I did not see that. I've heard good things about it.
Oh, it is so good. It only lasted 3 volumes, but it is absolutely my favorite out of all the New 52 books. And it is just like a D&D role-playing adventure in the DC universe. And I know it's got some characters that you love, Mike. Like I said, Shining Knight, Demon, Vandal Savage. I think it was Xanadu, and
it's kind of a magic secret six with that.
It's kind of like they basically start up in a pub and then they go on this adventure. The first 2 volumes are outstanding. The 3rd volume is a little weaker, but I still like it a lot. If you have not read it, and maybe I don't know, maybe this is. Have you guys, either of you guys read this?
No, not at all. I'm looking it up on DC Universe right now.
No, I have not. I'm totally want to.
This is our next read then for we're going to do Demon Knights. Okay. Love this story. Highly recommend it, especially if you have any fantasy interest in your blood. So I hope whenever I reread this that it doesn't disappoint.
We're a little bit late to call it a 10-year anniversary read of a New 52 comic, but still, okay.
It doesn't matter. It showed up at a good time. So yeah. All right, next.
All right.
Go ahead, Chad.
What is it?
Power
of the Dark Crystal, issue 11 specifically. I love this series. The Power of the Dark Crystal and the Beneath the Dark Crystal series that they did, that Boom released, were just so good. I thought that what they did with those characters and the way that they built out the world was better than the Netflix show, though I did like the Netflix show. But those characters are just ripe for drawing at any point in time. They're just so cool to see drawn out. So anytime I get a chance to see a Dark Crystal anything, I'm in for it.
What year did that come out?
It's not that old.
No. It's let's see. That was 2018 was that one.
Okay.
It's a Mark Buckingham cover.
Dark Crystal is evidence that we did not have a lot of entertainment choices as a child, right? I remember having such positive remembrances of that, and then whenever I introduced Dark Crystal to my kids, they were not impressed.
No, really?
Yes, no. They were like, "Why did you make us watch this?"
That was one of those movies that it scared the crap out of me as a kid.
Oh, the Xerxes and the
the sexies and all the big giant beetles and everything. Like everything was just, it was creepy. And then I'd watch like 5 more minutes of it, and then I'd see how much further I could get, and then I just loved it as I grew up.
So the Netflix series is worth watching. So I haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, it's definitely, it's a lot of puppet work. It's definitely they do a good time trying to do it. It's not as dark and dreary as the movie is, but I don't know how much. I don't know what else could be as just dark and just
for a definite kid show.
Yeah,
it couldn't be much darker.
It definitely brings you down. They have a little more fun, I think, in the TV show.
Okay, all right, Mike.
All right. Loading random comic. What's
Yeah.
that?
Give us a chance to read it. We try to leave it up there so you can at least see what it is.
Well, I do it, and all you see is
Yeah, you're right.
like
It's just a
whiteout.
white screen.
I tried angling it before.
Oh, okay, all right.
I could make up anything. This is Action Comics #1. My grandpa got it. It is a first volume of a very, very, very old title. It's Detective Comics Volume 1. Oh, Scott, you're going to be so impressed with my pick here, or my random
Your
pick.
random pick,
my
yeah.
shake. It is Detective Comics Volume 1, issue 351. First appearance of, this is in 1966.
The Riddler.
Oh, no, that's a little, he's a little earlier.
Okay.
You're in the ballpark of Batgirl's first appearance.
No, yeah, it is. Same, matter of fact, the flag, or the...
Yeah, but I don't know what's in, I don't know what's
logos,
in 350.
that was like 358,
6
9,
or
something
4?
like that.
Okay, all right. What's 351?
Well, 351 is the first appearance of Cluemaster.
I don't know who that is.
Cluemaster's sort of a C-list hero, but he's also very well known to be the father of Stephanie Brown, who is spoiler in the current iteration or current continuity. That she defied her father's criminal ways and went on to be a crime fighter and be one of the Batman family.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this is the Cluemaster's topsy-turvy times. I can't say I've read it. Let me see when I purchased it. I got it in 2018.
So you've had 4 years to read it and haven't read it.
I there's a lot of these old ones I don't read right away. I mean, come on. If I need to, I will. But it's a Silver Age, and Cluemaster was a kind of a dorky character. But it is his first appearance. Written by Gardner Fox and penciled by Carmine Infantino.
Oh. So
this is during the Julia Schwartz sort of revamp of Batman. So yeah. 6.5 copy worth $24, it says.
There you go. All right, Shad, what do we got coming up next on
episode
40, what is it, 7, I think?
On 147, we're going to be covering the movie Black Adam, the blockbuster hit, as well as Secret Invasion, the 2008 run, issues 1 through 8.
And Shad, if they wanted to reach out to you, where would they do that at?
Oh, you can find me on Facebook at Shad Schubert. That's SHAAD SCHUBERT.
All right, Mike, what about you?
You can reach me at m.atchison90@gmail.com.
And I'm Scott Reed. You can find me at burgcomics.com, BURGcomics.com. And there I'll have links to various things. Not doing any conventions now, so I'm trying to focus in more on the eBay store and posting on Facebook and all that fun stuff. So, all right, well, we'll be back soon with another episode, and we will talk at you then.
No, it's like 84. Yeah, it's more. Yeah, it's like 3 or 4 issues beforehand. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess they're like low print runs or something like that. So. I guess I couldn't believe it went for that. Yeah. There was two issues there though. Yeah. So it'd be $40. What is that? It's Iron Fist. Iron Fist number 14, which is the first appearance of Sabretooth. I was gonna say it looks like Sabretooth on the cover. Mm-hmm. Yep, I got this. That one's actually a keeper for me. So. Good. Maybe you can cover it on a CLZ Shake sometime. I have to read it first. Oh gosh. Oh, you don't put it in. You don't put it in until you read it. No. If it goes in my collection, I add it in. Oh, I don't know if I've even entered it yet. So I think it's still sitting out because I haven't put it in the system yet. Yeah, I've got 3 main boxes. I've got 2 read, 2 file, 2 Scott. 2 read, 2 file, 2 Scott. I like that. Yeah, I have not put it in. I don't have any Iron Fist in the system, so in CLZ. So I just realized that we could. I don't know. Do you guys log whether you've read stuff or not in CLZ? No, I thought about starting to do that, but it was like, oh my god, I'd have to go back. I mean, we're talking 14,000 comics, man. Yeah, that's true. Good point. Yeah. Well, see, it wouldn't be bad for me because I only have like 1,200 in there. Yeah, but I don't remember. Some of them I maybe have read. I don't remember if I've read. Well, that's There's all of when I got CLZ, I started logging the things I read since I got the app. But anything that was read pre the app is not logged because I was like, I don't remember. I don't rightfully feel like I can mark it as read because it's not. It should be marked as remembered. Do I remember this book? Yeah, it's hard to. Those are data points for people with small collections, I think. Yeah. No, that's like I said, it's just for me just to know what I want to keep. Yeah, I thought about ranking them. Not ranking them, but like scoring them or whatever. Yeah. Got that 10-star scale, and I did that for a few of them, but then right off the bat, I figured out. Yeah, I probably should, but I don't know. I could, if I had like a custom feel, I could say if it's whether or not it's a keeper or because a lot of the new comics now I just don't keep because I just don't have room for them. So I just if they're not a keeper, then I don't put them in the system. I don't put them in CLZ. Well, I do put them in the system, then I switch them to sold. And then, yeah, that's the collector in me. I like that. That's a waste. It might be, but there's a lot of people that would say what we do is a waste overall. Well, they're just wrong. Yeah.